The party was loud, glittering with chandeliers, laughter, and the clinking of glasses, but Jade Thompson only had eyes for keeping her balance on the crowded dance floor. She had promised herself she wouldn't spill her drink, trip, or embarrass herself tonight, but fate had other plans. As she turned to greet a friend, her heel caught on someone's shiny shoe. "Oh no," she gasped, looking down at the polished black leather she had just stepped on. The man, tall, perfectly dressed in a tailored suit, looked down at her with an unreadable expression. His dark eyes were calm, almost chilling, yet there was a spark of amusement hidden beneath the surface. "Careful," he said in a soft but commanding tone. "These shoes cost more than your outfit." Jade's cheeks burned crimson. I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there," she stammered, bending to adjust her own shoe. She could feel the curious gaze of everyone nearby, but she couldn't look away from him. There was something magnetic about the way he stood, the quiet confidence in every movement. "I suppose accidents happen," he finally said, offering a hand to steady her. It was firm, precise, and somehow comforting, even if his expression remained composed. Jade hesitated, then took it, noticing the brief flash of warmth in his eyes. For a moment, the noise around them faded. She couldn't explain it, but her heart was racing, not from embarrassment, but from the unexpected pull of connection. Little did she know, the man she had just apologized to would change everything the next morning. A simple misstep, a glance, and a moment that felt fleeting, was about to become the start of a story neither of them expected. The next morning, Jade Thompson arrived at her new job with a mix of excitement and nerves. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, outfits picked, notes reviewed, pep talks repeated in the mirror, but nothing could have prepared her for the surprise waiting in the lobby. As she stepped into the glass-walled office, she felt the familiar hum of the city outside, the murmur of colleagues around her, and a shock that stopped her in her tracks. There, behind the sleek, polished desk, stood the man from the party. Minho Kong. Her heart skipped a beat. He looked just as composed as last night, his suit crisp, his hair perfectly in place. Only now, the intensity in his eyes carried a professional edge. Jade's mind raced. "No, it can't be," she whispered to herself. Minho noticed her hesitation, a slight curve of a smile tugging at his lips, though he said nothing. "Jade Thompson, welcome," he said smoothly, his voice calm, controlled. "I'll be overseeing your work here." Jade nodded, struggling to find words. Her palms felt warm, her thoughts tangled between nerves and a strange flutter of anticipation. She had only met him last night at a party, and now he was her boss. Her mind replayed that first awkward encounter. The step on his shoe, his steady hand, the spark of attention she couldn't ignore. Minho handed her a folder of orientation materials, his fingers brushing hers briefly. A shiver ran down her spine. Jade tried to focus on the papers, on the office, on anything but him, but everything about him demanded her attention. As the morning went on, Jade realized two things. One, she needed to impress him professionally, and two, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The man she had stepped on at a party was now in charge of her career, and that simple twist of fate promised a story far more complicated than she had ever expected. Jade spent the rest of the week trying to prove herself. She had expected the usual first-week jitters, getting lost in the office, forgetting names, fumbling through small tasks. But working under Minho Kong added a whole new layer of tension. Every time he walked past her desk, her heart jumped, her mind blanked. There was no denying his presence was commanding, yet not intimidating in a harsh way, more like a quiet force she couldn't ignore. Minho observed her with a calm, steady gaze, making her wonder if he noticed every little thing she did. One afternoon he called her into his office to review a report. Jade's palms were sweaty, her chest tight, but she forced a smile. Minho's office was sleek and minimalist, but the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows softened the sharp lines. He motioned for her to sit. "Your work is solid," he said, voice smooth. "But there are areas we can improve." He leaned back, arms crossed, studying her reactions. Jade nodded, trying to hide her racing thoughts. Then, unexpectedly, he added, "You've got potential. Don't doubt yourself." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that surprised her. Without thinking, she stood and thanked him. Minho extended his hand, and then, almost instinctively, pulled her into a quick hug. It was brief, professional enough to excuse in a workplace, but warm, grounding, and electric. Jade felt her heartbeat spike. When she stepped back, Minho's expression was calm, unreadable, but his eyes lingered on hers just a moment longer than necessary. Jade left the office feeling lighter and more aware than ever of the complicated pull between them. Something was stirring, an unspoken connection growing beneath the surface. She had come to impress her boss, but already Miho Kang had become impossible to ignore. The project had started as a routine assignment, just numbers and presentations, but somehow it became the reason Jade found herself spending more time near Miho than anywhere else. Long hours at the office blurred into shared coffee breaks, quiet conversations over spreadsheets, and stolen glances that neither of them fully acknowledged. One rainy afternoon they were the only ones left in the office. Jade was struggling with a particularly tricky section of the report. Miho noticed immediately and came over, standing silently beside her. "Need a hand?" he asked softly. His voice wasn't commanding, just patient. Jade hesitated, then nodded. Together they went through the numbers side by side. She noticed the small things, the way he leaned slightly to see the screen, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, and the calm way he guided her without taking over. When they finally finished, Jade let out a relieved sigh. "Thanks. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Miho looked at her, a faint, approving smile touching his lips. "You've got talent. You just needed to see it for yourself." Before either of them realized it, they shared a brief hug, unnecessary in any professional sense but comforting nonetheless. Jade felt the warmth linger longer than expected, her chest tightening in a way that left her breathless. As the rain tapped against the office windows, they fell into easy conversation, sharing little stories about their childhoods, favorite foods, and silly habits. Jade laughed more freely than she had in months, and Miho's rare smiles made her heart flutter. By the end of the day it was clear, this was no longer just a professional connection. Something deeper was growing, quiet but undeniable. And though neither of them said it aloud, both felt it, the beginning of a bond that might just last far longer than a single project. Jade had always prided herself on handling things on her own, but today tested her patience, and her nerves. A client had misunderstood an email, and suddenly she found herself cornered with complaints, questions, and mounting frustration. She felt her confidence falter, her usual composure slipping. Just as her stress peaked, a familiar calm presence appeared. Miho stepped in quietly, assessing the situation with a sharp eye. Without a word, he handled the client's concerns, speaking with authority yet keeping the tone measured. The tension in the room eased almost instantly. Jade watched him, a mix of relief and awe flooding her. "Thanks," she whispered once the client left, her voice barely audible. Miho turned to her, the usual guarded expression softening slightly. "You handled most of it well," he said. "I just helped a bit." She gave him a small smile, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Without thinking she stepped forward, and Miho responded naturally, pulling her into a gentle hug. It was brief but sincere, a shield against the stress of the day and a quiet acknowledgement of their growing connection. Jade could feel the steadiness in his embrace, the way he seemed to anchor her just by being there. After a moment they stepped back, awkwardly smiling at one another. Neither said anything more, but both felt the unspoken understanding. They were becoming important to each other in ways neither had expected. That evening as Jade returned home, her thoughts kept drifting back to him. The way his presence calmed her, the rare smiles he gave, the hug that had lingered longer than necessary. She realized that Miho Kang was no longer just her boss or the man she had stepped on at a party. He was becoming someone she couldn't imagine her days without. It started as a casual invitation, a team dinner to celebrate completing a big project. Jade wasn't expecting much, just a friendly evening with colleagues. But the moment Miho suggested she sit beside him, her heart skipped a beat. The restaurant was warm and lively, a soft hum of conversation around them. Jade found herself talking more freely than usual, sharing little stories about her childhood, her dreams, and even embarrassing habits she usually kept hidden. Miho listened with quiet attention, asking questions that made her feel genuinely seen. When it was Miho's turn, he shared glimpses of his life in Korea, stories of family traditions, and the challenges of moving to a new country. There was no boastfulness, only honesty, and Jade found herself leaning in, fascinated by the glimpses of his world he let her see. At one point their hands brushed while reaching for the same dish. Both paused, a subtle warmth spreading from the brief touch. Neither pulled away quickly, and a small smile passed between them, one that lingered longer than necessary. Later, when the evening wound down and they walked out into the cool night air, Miho lightly touched her shoulder as they waited for the taxi. It was an unspoken comfort, a gesture that spoke volumes without words. Jade felt the pull of his presence, calm yet electric, and for the first time she realized their connection had grown into something deeper. She glanced at him, and he returned her gaze with that same composed expression, but softer somehow. The night didn't end with confessions or grand gestures. just quiet understanding, shared smiles, and the warmth of being close. As the taxi drove her home, Jade's thoughts were full of him. The man who had started as a party stranger and was now becoming a part of her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. She knew somehow this was only the beginning. The office buzzed with the usual chatter, but Jade couldn't ignore the subtle shift in Minho's demeanor today. He seemed distracted, his calm composure slightly frayed, and every time another colleague approached her desk, she noticed the flicker of something in his eyes, something protective, maybe even jealous. It happened during a brief meeting when one of her teammates praised her work a little too enthusiastically. Jade laughed politely and Minho's gaze tightened ever so slightly. She caught herself glancing at him, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and nervousness. Later, when they were alone in the conference room, Minho leaned against the table, watching her organize papers. He didn't say anything at first, just studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Is something wrong?" she asked carefully, trying to sound casual. Minho hesitated, then shook his head. "No, nothing. You're just very good at what you do," he said finally, his words measured but carrying an unspoken weight. Jade could sense that he wasn't just commenting on her work. There was something deeper simmering beneath the surface. A silence stretched between them, filled only by the faint hum of the office lights. Jade felt her stomach tighten in that familiar way, the way it had when she first met him, when she had hugged him after the stressful client situation, or when they had brushed hands at dinner. Before either could move, Minho stepped closer and offered a simple, brief hug. It wasn't a solution, not a confession, just a silent acknowledgement of shared feelings neither wanted to name yet. Jade felt the warmth linger, realizing more than ever how much he mattered to her. As she returned to her desk, she couldn't stop thinking. Minho Kong wasn't just her boss. He was becoming something far more complicated, far more important. And now she sensed that he felt the same way. The office was unusually quiet that evening. Most of the team had gone home, leaving just Jade and Minho in the soft glow of the desk lamps. The air felt heavy with unspoken words, the kind that had been building for weeks. Minho closed his laptop and leaned back, letting out a slow breath. "Jade," he began, his voice quieter than usual. She looked up, meeting his gaze. Something in his eyes, soft, intense, made her heart flutter. He paused, searching for the right words. "I've been trying to ignore it, but I can't anymore. Since the party, since your first day, I've been drawn to you. More than I expected. More than I thought I could let myself feel." Jade's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to say it so plainly, and yet, a part of her had always sensed it. Her hands fidgeted with the edges of a folder as she gathered courage. "Minho, I feel the same. I was scared, but I can't stop thinking about you either." For a moment they simply stared at each other, the office fading into the background. Then almost instinctively they closed the space between them. Minho's arms wrapped around her in a long, heartfelt hug, gentle yet full of unspoken emotion. Jade rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady warmth of him and the safety in that embrace. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It wasn't about words or promises. It was about two people acknowledging what had quietly grown between them, a connection neither wanted to hide anymore. When they finally pulled apart, their eyes met, smiling softly, the tension lifted. Something had shifted, subtly but profoundly. They weren't just boss and employee, party stranger and accidental acquaintance. They were something more, something real. And in that quiet office, under the glow of the lamps, Jade knew this was the beginning of something neither of them would forget. Life at the office had shifted subtly since that evening of confessions. Jade and Minho moved through their days with a quiet understanding, a shared smile here, a reassuring glance there. Their connection wasn't hidden, but it wasn't flaunted either, just gentle, natural, and comforting. One afternoon, a difficult project threatened to overwhelm Jade. She felt her confidence slipping again, and stress crept into her chest. Minho noticed immediately. Without a word, he came to her desk, placing a calm hand on her shoulder. "You're capable," he said softly. "I've seen it." That small gesture, steady, grounding, gave her the boost she needed. Jade smiled, feeling the warmth of his encouragement settle over her. Later, as they worked late into the evening, they shared quiet laughter over small mistakes in the report, leaning on each other's humor to relieve the tension. A simple hug punctuated the end of the night, a silent acknowledgement of support, understanding, and trust. It wasn't romantic in a flashy way, but it carried the weight of everything they had been feeling for weeks. Even outside the office, their bond deepened. Jade found herself thinking of him during ordinary moments, walking home, brewing coffee, or reading a book. Minho, too, seemed more relaxed in her presence, the stiffness he often wore around colleagues giving way to brief smiles and casual gestures of care. They were learning each other's rhythms, preferences, and quirks. Every shared joke, every meaningful glance, every gentle hug became a thread weaving them closer. Neither rushed the relationship, but both felt the certainty of it. A love that was quiet but steady, strong without needing to be declared at every turn. By the time they left the office that night, walking side by side under the city lights, it was clear. This connection wasn't temporary. It wasn't fleeting. It was becoming something enduring, something they both wanted to nurture forever. The company gala was a swirl of lights, laughter, and elegant attire, but Jade hardly noticed the sparkling chandeliers or the chatter around her. She only had eyes for Minho, who looked effortlessly composed in a dark suit. The same calm presence she had met at a party months ago now felt like home. They arrived together, side by side, sharing quiet smiles as colleagues complimented them. Jade felt a warmth in her chest. This was more than a night out. It was a celebration of the journey they had taken together. The party misstep, the first day surprises, the small, meaningful moments that had grown into something undeniable. Throughout the evening, Minho stayed close, offering subtle gestures of care, a guiding hand through the crowd, an encouraging nod during speeches, a quiet laugh that made her heart skip. Jade realized that love wasn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes, it was in the steady presence, the shared laughter, the reassurance of a gentle hug at just the right moment. Later, beneath the soft glow of the city lights outside the gala, Minho turned to her. Their eyes met, and everything that had been left unspoken over the weeks was understood. He offered a slow, heartfelt hug, holding her with care, warmth, and a quiet promise that this was just the beginning. Jade rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart and the certainty of forever. For Jade and Minho, the story that began with a misstep at a party had grown into a love both unexpected and enduring. The kind of love that didn't need to be rushed, only felt, nurtured, and cherished with every shared smile, glance, and hug. Sometimes the smallest moments lead to the greatest love. Don't forget to treasure them.